Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Hani, for giving me this platform to speak a little bit about my research. So as to my background, my name is Musin Simnaizgi. I'm a PhD candidate at Wayne State University. And I have been practicing both in the academia and the construction industry for the past, for more than 10 years. And now I am a licensed professional engineer in Michigan. I have both the construction industry experience and the academy have been both overseas and here in Africa, Middle East, and now here in the US. And I have been a PMI GLC member for the past 2.5 years, I guess. Okay, so as my title shows, I'm going to talk about the investigation and basically the research is about factors affecting MVM implementation in construction industry. So before I delve in more into the subject matter of my research, let me quickly go through the what EVM and the background to it. So basically, most of my colleagues have already mentioned a little bit of the earned value management, and let me kind of quickly go through it. So previously, project performances used to be assessed by comparing basically the planned value against the actual cost, but this comparison doesn't provide the entire picture. It specifically doesn't indicate whether the project is within schedule or not. And no information is conveyed regarding the planned cost of the completed work. So it doesn't tell us, basically, that comparison doesn't tell us how much worse the completed work is. However, when we come to EVM, it gives a better objective assessment of project performance compared to what I already said, as it integrates the three key components of project management. Basically, it integrates the schedule, scope, and cost of a project. As far as the background to EVM, it has been originated in the Department of Defense in the 60s as cost schedule control system criteria. It had original 35 criteria that earned value management system that contractors must satisfy. Then American National Standard Institute and the Electronic Industry Alliances reduced the 35 criteria into 32 guidelines in the 90s and compiled it as an ANSI EIA 748 standard. So basically this transferred EVM from government requirement to an industry best practice. And Department of Defense actually accepted this standard and it as a replacement to the CSCS requirement. And PMI, understanding the importance of EVM, started to include in its PMBOK in its first edition in 1987. And as most of us know, EVM is now one of the techniques in both the cost control and schedule control process in the cost management and schedule management knowledge area, respectively. So what is exactly EVM? So EVM is, as I already mentioned, a project management methodology that combines schedule, cost, and scope to answer the question, what work was done for the money spent? So EVM essentially answers three questions. These questions are like, what is a product? Basically, what is the scope? How much does it cost to deliver the project or the cost of that scope? Then when will the project be delivered? So we have three parameters that are integrated and answered by EVM. And to do this, EVM has three key parameters or key variables: the planned value, the earned value, and actual cost. So the planned value is basically the budgeted cost of the work scheduled, and the actual cost is actual cost of work performed. So these were the two costs that used to be compared in the old days. Now we have this earned value, and earned value is also called budgeted cost of work performed, and it is a value of work performed expressed in terms of the budget of the work. So it basically reveals how much of the work performed so far would cost according to the budget, or in other words, how much the work was performed is worth. So let me quickly talk about the EVM metrics that we have. So EVM matrices basically has two of these. We have the variances and the performance indices. And these are used to assess both the cost and schedule performance of a project. So as you could see, the formulation for the indices are given on the left corner of the figure, and the variances on the lower right side of the figure. So the cost variance and cost performance index, as their name suggests, compare the budget of work performed to the cost of the actual work. And when the CPI is less than one, the cost variance or the CV will be also less than 0, and this tells us cost overrun for the work completed. So it tells us we are over budget. And if CPI is greater than 1 and CV is greater than 0, it shows us like we are doing well. We are basically having an underrun. In a similar way, the schedule variance and the schedule performance indices index compare project of work performed to the budget of the work scheduled. And in a similar way, when SPI is less than 1, it tells us less work was completed than was planned. And when SPI is more than 1, it tells us more work was completed than was planned. So as a summary, we can say like when the indices are more than 1 and when the variance is positive, we have a favorable progress. But when the indices is less than 1 and variance are negative, we have a unfavorable progress. So EVM, as what we have said, is a good way, but it has some issues. Basically, EVM performs quite well for the cost aspect of a project. However, when we see the schedule matrices, both the SPI and the SV, those values do not properly represent the real situation towards the end of a project, especially over the final third of a project. And the problem becomes more evident when there is a delay. So basically it loses the predictive ability over the last third of a project, and it fails to give the true picture of a delayed project. So at the end, because at the end of the project, whether the project is delayed or not, SPI converges and concludes at 1, as we can see on the diagram. We can see like SPI is converging to 1 and SV converges to 0. So basically at the end of the project, it tells us like everything went well. So this was a drawback. Moreover, as you can see here, the schedule variances are given in dollar, in a monetary unit. And this is contrary to expectation. It's reported in units of cost rather than time. Because of this, the schedule variance value becomes counterintuitive and doesn't communicate a meaningful message. With these drawbacks, the schedule assessment couldn't be performed reliably. So using EVM, as a solution to this, an extension of EVM, which is the earned schedule, was devised or has been developed. And it uses a time-based indicators. And it has actually, the earned schedule has been also included in the latest edition of the PMBOK guide, the PMI book. And the earned schedule, the idea behind earned schedule is basically to find the time at which current earned value should have been achieved as per the planned value or the planned cost spending. So it's basically estimated by projecting the cumulative earned value onto the, so we project the cumulative earned value into the planned value, and then we go with the vertical line from point of intersection from here to the time axis gives us the earned schedule. So basically, the earned schedule is the time from the project start, to the point on the PV curve where PV equals EV. It could thus be said, earned schedule is the earned portion of the planned duration and tells the time worthiness of the work performed. So here, for instance, as an example, we can see the difference between cost-based schedule variance and the time-based schedule variance. So this T indicates the time-based. So we can see that at present, the actual time or the data date is 7 months, and the schedule variance, as we can see, is 2 months. So it's basically telling us the project is behind schedule by 2 months. But if we use the schedule variance, cost-based schedule variance, basically it gives us some dollar value, and it doesn't give any meaningful information. But when we use the earned schedule, it gives us the actual meaningful information.
So this is to solve the issue at the end of the project, or are they going to use this thing during the whole time of the project? Because as you mentioned, one of the drawbacks of using EVM was when we get too close to the end of the project. Is this done in the entire project?
Still, I mean, it's the issue with EVM becomes more magnified towards the end of the project. But even throughout the project, using earned schedule basically gives a much better predictive power, and
so you can use it throughout the whole project. And you mentioned, because this is very interesting for the people that studied PMBOK and they became PMP, these are new discussions in PMBOK. You're saying that PMBOK is adapting the earned schedule methodology into the new PMBOK book?
Yes, it doesn't basically delve in into much depth, but if we check the latest edition, the 7th edition, earned schedule is mentioned there as an extension.
That's news to me, so that's a nice thing to know.
Yeah, so probably people who are
I know edition 7 is coming, so but I didn't know this was changed. Okay, thank you.
It's already included actually. Okay, so coming back to my research. So basically, the problem that we have is EVM has been relatively well established in the aerospace, energy, and defense industry. However, it has not been used frequently in other industry, particularly our industry, the construction industry. And whenever it's implemented, there are questions on its effectiveness and reliability, especially in terms of the schedule performance. So we want to identify the factors that influence the implementation of EVM, identify the most important factors, and quantify or model the relationship between the factors and the implementation of EVM. Then we plan to, or the other objectives that we want to meet or hit is develop a strategy for mitigating the negative influences. And finally, we want to make a recommendation and suggestion for EVM best practices in the industry. To address the problem identified in the research and meet the objective of the research, we developed a survey instrument to collect the necessary data. And based on literature review, interviews, and research team meetings, a survey questionnaire with a below component was developed. So respondent demography or background, like information on their education level, years of experience, position in their company. Then factors affecting implementation of EVM, like the type of project, project budget, company role, and other factors as well. And then we also added open-ended questions, giving the respondents to tell us if there are other factors that influence the EVM implementation, which we didn't include in our survey, and then how they tackled those factors. After developing the survey instrument for data collection, the survey was reviewed by research teams, which includes people from Wayne State University and other external industry, mainly DTE and others, for consistency of the questions in survey instrument with the objectives, measurability of the survey question outcomes, clarity of the survey questions. And before we distribute it to our target group, we conducted a small pilot survey to see if the intended purpose were met. And The survey was distributed online using the Qualtrics survey software platform, and we collected 367 responses. Out of these, 354 were completed responses, and the remaining 12 were not completed. They had some missing data. And from the 354 completed responses, 203 respondents said they are familiar or they are aware and they know EVM. And when we asked them whether they implement it or not, 151 respondents said like they implemented EVM in their projects, and the remaining 77 said they didn't implement EVM in their project. And the other 151 out of the 354 people who completed the survey said they are not familiar with EVM basically. And as you can see on the figure, that was basically the flow chart that we used to differentiate our groups. And we intend.
Did you target like professional, like project managers, or did you just target like people that are in the project management related work? How did you target? Was it Delphi technique that you used to target the special people?
So basically our primary people of interest were project managers, project engineers, project controllers, and schedulers. So these were people who are more, who work closely with EVM and
that's a nice information to know how they reacted to your question too. So I'd like to know that, how the demographic.
Yeah. So we are actually, this is work in progress, and we try to analyze the different groups. Basically, we try to see what the people who are implementing are saying.
I know we're running out of time, and this is very interesting. So I want to get to like your conclusion so we can move.
Yeah. So basically, I have some preliminary survey result. As you can see, around 42%. This is like people. The project sizes that people for people who are implementing EVM, and we can see like 42% of the respondents have project size, big project sizes, and the others are like smaller ones. And when we ask them how they are using it, we can see like more than 2/3 of respondents basically use EVM for both controlling and prediction. And when we see the project delivery method and type of contract that people are using, we can see like the design build and design bid build are basically account about 2/3, and the contract type, the fixed account about like 80% actually. And then we have, this is a comparison in terms of people who are implementing and people who don't implement. Final, basically, based on the literature review, research team meetings, and the survey results, the factors indicating in the figure, which we use it as a fishbone diagram, basically, identified the potential influencing EVM implementation. The exact nature of the relationship and which of these factors significantly affect EVM implementation is what we are working on, as this study is work in progress. At the end of this study, we anticipate to identify the most important factors that influence EVM implementation, develop model, and make necessary recommendation for best practices. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate for giving me this
Thank you, Musi. It was very good, and I know a lot of people in the meeting have a lot of questions for you, especially I know this is a very good topic for Dr. Usman and Dr. Moylan and Dr. Al-Bayati to discuss and have more questions for you. But like I said, we're running out of time. We got only like 20 minutes, and I want Yahya to also have the chance to present his presentation. And hopefully after Yahya's presentation, I'm going to give few event updates and announcements, and then we can discuss like for half hour any questions or any discussions that other people might have. But feel free to send your questions in the chat as the presenters are presenting, so we know how many questions we have and how much time we have to allocate for the question and answer.